So then it's time to introduce the next speaker, and that is Tatiana Tabalchuk. Are you here, Tatiana?
Hey, that's me.
Yes, hello. Welcome, and you are the director of the National Ozone Monitoring Research and Education Center, Belarusian State University. And as I understand, you will give a presentation on the current effects of climate change in Belarus.
Yeah, that's right.
Yes. Welcome to start.
Okay, thank you. First of all, I want to say thank you for inviting me. I'm glad to take part in this event, and this is my first time when I'm a speaker in the Baltic University program event, and I'm very excited. So I'm trying to share my screen. Can you see it?
Yes.
Yeah, here we go. Oh, just a moment. Oh. Yeah. Well, I want to tell you a little bit about current climate change in Belarus. In the beginning of the presentation, it's customary to say a few words about the relevance of the topic. But to be honest, I'm not sure that we really need it when we talk about climate change, because I do believe that everybody has heard about it. We all can see the consequences of climate change in places we are living in. It touches every person in the world and it goes global. On this slide, you can see a global temperature anomaly from 1880 to 2020, according to jointly reported assessments from NASA, the UK Met Office, NOAA, and Berkeley S. The annual update of global surface temperatures shows 2020 essentially tied records set in 2016, but the years were nothing alike. Temperatures in 2016 were boosted by a strong El Nino, whereas last year the Pacific Ocean entered La Nina, which has a cooling effect. The impacts of heat waves, ice melt, and wildfires were felt worldwide. If a current rate of warming continues, the world will breach the targets set in the Paris Climate Agreement. This is a screenshot from a pretty famous NASA video showing as global average surface temperature anomaly. We can see that in the last 5 years, there are just a few spots on the planet with negative temperature anomalies, and most of the territory has positive ones. The highest anomalies are in the Arctic, Siberia, Europe, and some other places. Belarus is located here in a region with a significant temperature increase. Here is average annual temperature anomaly in Belarus from 1881 to 2020. As you can see, the temperature increase in Belarus started in the late 18th and by 2020 has reached 3 degrees. But what does it mean? 3 degrees, it doesn't sound much. But the nature feels different. Temperature and precipitation changes have a negative impact on biodiversity. All plants on these pictures are not typical for Belarus. They are steppe species. But now we can find it in the south of the country. And we are talking not just about some separate individual plants, but quite big formations of them. And of course, we have more than just 4 invasive plant species. Also, with new climatic conditions, we have changes in fauna. Here you can see steppe eagle, Przewalski horse, speckled ground squirrel, and golden jackal. Uh, and these are just a few of the many invasive species to mention. We can name a few more birds and some insects and spiders, like, for example, mantis and tarantula. Changes in temperature and hydrothermal conditions led to the expansions of the steppe species of plants and animals, as well as to changes in the flora and fauna of water bodies and streams in Belarus. We can say that now the steppe zone is a bit closer to Baltic region than we used to think. Expansion of the steppe species and changes in biodiversity is not the only result of climate change in Belarus. Climate change makes weather more extreme. Last years, we could hear a lot about heat waves, wildfires, floods, storms, and so on around the world. For Belarus, we also observing this trend. We have more hot days, droughts, showers, storms, and other extreme weather events. On this slide, you can see the consequences of the strongest storm in the history of meteorological observations in Belarus. It took place in 2016 and destroyed 4,000 hectares of forest in Belarus. This red spot marks 16,000 hectares of forest that were destroyed by the storm in the Minsk region. Unfortunately, storms are not the only problem we have. In recent years, we can also see a lot of dust storms in Belarus, especially in the south of the country. One more negative consequence of climate change is wildfires. I think everybody has heard about wildfires in Australia and Siberia last year. Belarus also had some. But thanks God, our wildfires were not so great to make the world discuss it. Because of snowless winter, the wildfire season started in February and continued in spring and summer. The fires affected not only forests, but also wetlands and drained peatlands. Wildfires in such areas can continue for several months, releasing a lot of carbon dioxide and various pollutants into the atmosphere in the process. In addition to that, these pollutants can carry radioactive material into the atmosphere as a consequence of the contamination of Belarusian territory after the Chernobyl disaster. But climate change is not the only cause of dust storms and wildfires. It's also a result of local human activities. Our country is known for its vast wetlands, especially in the south region called Polessia. But our wetlands suffered badly from aggressive draining during the Soviet era. And it is now a well-established scientific fact that intensive drainage of wetlands leads to lowering the water table, wind erosion, and wildfires. On the map of 1958, we can see that wetlands cover 21.7% of the territory of Belarus, and now it's less than 10%. Despite this, Belarus is still in the top 20 countries with the largest area of peatlands. Wetlands are an important part of the natural environment. Every year, 1 hectare of wetland absorbs 550 to 1800 kilograms of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and releases 260 to 700 kilograms of oxygen. This is 7 to 15 times more than 1 hectare of forest or meadow can process. However, destruction of the wetlands' natural hydrological regime as a result of both drainage and climate change leads to lowering the water table, decreases in water reserves, violation of the hydrological regime of rivers, and wildfires. Now it's a fact that wetlands are one of the most valuable and at the same time the most vulnerable natural ecosystems in terms of carbon storage and maintaining the sustainability of biodiversity in the face of climate change. So now Belarus prioritizes conservation and restoration of wetlands ecosystem. By now, about 50,000 hectares drained peatlands were restored in Belarus with UNDP help. This work continues according to the Paris Agreement, where Belarus has made voluntary commitments to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Those commitments includes also restoration of drained peatlands, which lead to decrease of carbon dioxide emission in the country. A significant part of the nature reserve areas in Belarus is presented by wetlands. For 2020, 26 of those wetlands have a status of Ramsar territory and occupy almost 800,000 hectares or 3.7% of the country. And for the last year, tourist trips to Belarusian peatlands have become very popular. Needless to say, those trips are well organized and hosted by the local guides. So you are very welcome to come to Belarus and see these beautiful landscapes. And thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Tatiana, for bringing up the influences on ecosystems and biodiversity in this climate change discussion. So we have, I will see, I think we have some questions for you, Tatiana. Yes, so in your opinion, what are the beliefs of the general public? Do they believe in climate change, or are there a lot of skepticism like in the USA? What would you say about that?
It's a very interesting question about the believers, because I know the very different opinions. Some people in Belarus think that the natural factors are the main, but some people think that it's a result of human activities. I think we can find both kind of believers.
All right. So the next question, how can Belarus go about in improving the carbon storage in its wetlands and ecosystems?
Excuse me, one more time.
How can Belarus go about in improving the carbon storage in its wetlands and ecosystems?
First of all, we need to restore our wetlands, because it's a great spot of storage of carbon dioxide, and also a great place to release the oxygen back to the atmosphere. So we have commitments to restore our drained wetlands and peatlands. So it's our like the main way to do.
Do we have any more questions? Are there any one of the colleagues that want to orally ask something or comment? Huh? Oh, I think Pontus wants to ask you something.
Yes, we have another question here for you, Tatiana. And I wonder, how do you see the role of Belarus in the transition of climate change? You have a lot of wetlands and peatlands that can work as a carbon sink. How can that be improved on the global climate politics?
Yeah, we have a lot of wetlands and peatlands, but as you could see, not as a lot as we had just 60 years ago. So I think the main what we can do is to try to restore our drained peatlands. It's really, really important, not just for Belarusian climate, but from at least all Europe climate and for all the world ecosystem.
Okay, so if we don't have any more questions, I say once again, thank you very much, Tatiana.
Thank you.
And thank you, colleagues, for the questions. And then we take about 5 minutes break then from now. So see you in 5 minutes. Thank you.